Even before the Cataclysm, magic existed in all places. A spark of insight when writing an assignment, heroic feats by soldiers protecting their comrades, fire almost retreating from brave firefighters, unexplainable lights and triumphs of nature over machine, subtle shifts away from the natural order in our day-to-day lives, easy to miss for most. But things changed after the vortex. Well, up for much debate, many mages and scholars argue that the vortex in Siberia is actually a rift itself, and not just a conduit for rifts. But while most rifts last only a few moments before closing, the vortex maintains itself through a constant flood of magic, from a realm made completely of magic. This realm, it is sterilized, is the source of all magical energy, and is the central point of all creation. All realms hold a sense of innate magic from this place. But what is magic? It is an energy, called Way by the Centauri elves. This energy infuses living beings with vitality and power, and can interact with words of power or the base will of powerful individuals to change the fabric of reality. Magic users, called mages as shorthand, use magic in different ways to interact with the world around them or themselves, but not with impunity. Magic does rejuvenate as it floods in from the vortex in places of power, but it is semi-finite. It can run out for periods of time, forcing mages to ration it. Its use is also not easy. Magic places a heavy physical and mental strain on the user, causing pain and sickness if used too much. There exists two primary classes of mages: wizards, who use the magic of way lines to power their spells, and sorcerers, who have a well of magic existing within themselves. There are, of course, exceptions to this rule, with many fae having their own sense of magic powered by proximity to nature, or seraphim, who seem to be able to use purification magic at will. But for humans, the general rule is that if you practice magic, you are either a wizard or a sorcerer. Magic flows through our world. Even before the Cataclysm, and before the vortex sparked massive flows of magical energy on Earth, there existed a sense of magic in all things. The flow of this magic, named after the Centauri word for magic, way, became way lines. Think of the vortex like a waterfall of magical energy. Now imagine that waterfall snaking out like rivers or tendrils throughout our world. Way lines are crucial to understanding the magic of the Cataclysm. They are the source of power for not only wizards, but also serve as energy for many creatures. Wizards use them to enchant spells, a process which shall be delved into later. But way lines aren't all alike. They're all made up of three aspects which define their nature: power, flow, and purity. First, power. The power of the way line measures how much magical energy exists within a geographical location. This power is determined by a few factors: its proximity to a place of power, such as the vortex itself, the Titan under the mountain in Hope City, and places like Mount Olympus. A history of use. Way lines can actually be strengthened by repeated use, like exercising the environment. And how recently the way line has been used. Way lines are renewable, but their power takes time to recharge. Think of places of power as the source of magical energy. On post-Cataclysm Earth, most way lines originate from the vortex in Siberia. But some also originate in other places of power that predate the Cataclysm, such as Table Mountain, due to the imprisoned Adamastor. Places of power can also be created through intense ritual and cosmic events, which scholars still do not fully understand. Places of power feed way lines their magic, and wizards who use the magic drain it through its use, like a bucket of water being drunk from, while it is also being filled up again from a tap. Wizards use a way line also strengthen this bucket by stretching its capacity and exercising its use. So places with many wizards tend to become stronger way lines after a period of time. Flow. To continue comparing magic to water, if way lines are a bucket or a lake, and the places of power are the tap or a waterfall, then there needs to be a flow connecting them. This flow represents the distance and obstacles between a source of magic and the destination wayline. Waylines with many obstacles also reduce the capacity of a wayline. Distance is easier to understand. The further from the vortex you are, the harder it is to channel the magic of the vortex. But natural and man-made barriers also have a role in inhibiting and directing the flow of magic. Natural flows, like rivers, can carry wayline energy. The Nile River, for instance, carries large quantities of magic to adjacent waylines. In urban centres, large buildings and slums can block wayline flow. This is why the slums surrounding Hope City tend to have weak waylines, despite their proximity to the Titan. In creating an environment where magic can flow freely and empower waylines, it is important to keep in mind natural barriers, natural transit points like rivers, but also the principles of Feng Shui. Feng Shui and other arts of shaping our environments help magical energy flow more easily, increasing the flow of magic within a wayline and out of it. Some greedy wizards don't want to share, of course, and it is a valid strategy to block off access to places of power through intentionally violating the principles of Feng Shui. The 3-point line in the State of Good Hope intentionally blocks wayline flow into the neighbouring Zulu Empire. This is a matter of contention between both the states. Finally, purity. A wayline has its own nature. It can be dark, light, or in between. The nature and purity of a wayline determines what type of magic is effectively cast there. Light magic struggles to be cast in dark waylines, and dark magic struggles to be cast in light waylines. The purity of waylines also has a tangible effect on the environment. Magical smog, the smell of burnt rubber, and an invisible sense of menace hangs over dark waylines. While light waylines encourage the growth of nature and boost its residents' immune systems. The psyche of people is also affected by their wayline. Dark waylines breed discontent and abuse. Light waylines encourage goodliness. The purity of a wayline is initially affected by what type of magic is cast there. Dark magic darkens waylines. Light magic lightens waylines. But other things also affect purity. Repeated acts of violence, poverty, suffering, and abuse can darken a wayline. Even pollution, such as man-made smog and sewage, can also darken a wayline. On the other hand, nature, plant life, and the presence of good fae, like pixies, clean up waylines of darkness and bring them towards a neutral, or even light, level of purity. Fae have become an important aspect of the magical ecosystem on Earth for this service, but are hated by practitioners of dark magic as a result. Sensing the nature of a wayline is a skill taught to all young mages. In fact, many schools teach it at a primary school level. Depending on the level of darkness in a wayline, almost anyone can detect its nature. Now that we have a firm grasp of waylines and the magic flow throughout our world, we can discuss the art of channeling this magic into spells. Those who channel wayline energy with the use of spell words are called wizards. Wizards seldom have magic of their own and rely on waylines to power their spells. Spells are made up of spell words, words of power from ancient, alien, and/or eldritch languages from beyond the in-between. These words are often primordial in nature, and power resonates with every syllable. Stringing together these words into coherent sentences can result in successful spells. Many of these spell words come from languages familiar to us. Hebrew is a spell language, and its words can be used to channel certain types of spells. Other languages are far more ancient, sounding like the elements themselves. Others are from alien realms, like Centauri, being taught to us by otherworlders stranded by the rifts. Languages tend to have certain affinities. Graf script is a language dedicated to necromancy, while Hebrew tends to work best with purification and warding spells. The power of the words isn't locked in intent or will. They are inherently powerful in their own right, containing the essence of the power they control. The side effect of this power is that memorization and uttering of the spell itself involves literal storing of the magical power within one's mind. This can be a huge physical strain, as the memorization for a primordial spell word that creates fire can feel like fire in one's own mind. It takes a lot of willpower, mental strength, and perseverance for a wizard to memorize many spells. Most wizards have mastered the ability of quick memorization from spellbooks and then purposely forgetting them once they are no longer needed. Wizards who have over-memorized spells have been known to show physical changes, like bulging veins on their heads, whitened eyes, and even elements of the spell they memorized being cast unconsciously around them. For instance, a wizard who has memorized a spell for a fireball may experience flames shooting out of his or her eyes. As memorization and casting of spell words puts a physical strain on the user, wizards are constantly finding ways to lighten the load, shortening phrases and finding what words put the least strain on the user. Many wizards guard their discoveries closely, as all spells must be handwritten. Only highly expensive printers have been able to replicate some spell languages, and only with using ink infused with expensive materials. But if written by hand, a spell word can be transcribed with a simple pen. Spell words must be uttered from memory. If a word is uttered using a physical reference, the spell will be cast, but the physical reference will burn up in a mostly harmless golden or dark fire. These once-off spell references are called scrolls, and are a common commodity for non-wizards wanting to use a spell once. The only material found to be able to retain a spell word without burning up is scorified living skin, but only if used by the owner of said skin. But be warned about engraving spell words onto yourself, as its properties may transmit onto the user. The process of casting spells as a wizard is as follows. Channeling. The wizard will reach out their senses towards the local way line, signaling their intent to use its power. Depending on the nature of the spell, the purity of the way line will affect how easy this phase is. Incantation. The wizard will start incanting the spell words memorized or written on a scroll. Every intonation and minor pronunciation is crucial for successful delivery, and even a small mistake can result in a failed spell. Ritual. Some spells require a degree of ritual circles, presence of ingredients, appropriate circumstances, and even sacrifice. This is performed during the incantation at the right moments. And finally, casting. The casting is released at the crescendo of the incantation, as the channeled magic is refined by the incantation and ritual and released as a completed spell. Verbal incantation is not just speaking. Often it can sound like singing, hitting the right notes to perform the spell properly. But spells don't even need to be verbal. Movement is its own form of language, and some wizards have found spells that work with dance, channeling certain routines into powerful shield spells and illusions. Spells can also be locked into objects, granting them magical properties. This is called enchanting. Preparing scrolls for use is technically a form of enchanting, as it involves a willful creation of an object bearing magical properties. But for people wanting something a bit more permanent, enchanters use hidden spell words or unspeakable runes to imbue objects with magic. Popular enchantments are hardening spells, which prevent materials from snapping or bending. Hunters are big fans of blades that can never go blunt, or bear an aura of purification that damages evil spirits. For warding off evil spirits, a simple enchantment is the engraving of purification script onto vellum, sealed with special wax. Enchantment can also happen without the intervention of an enchanter, as objects under certain circumstances have been known to gain magical properties, such as swords soaked in the blood of 1,000 foes becoming sentient, or a broom used to clean up magical residue becoming able to fly. These naturally enchanted objects are unpredictable, however, and we should only use them with extreme caution. Technology and magic don't necessarily clash, but for most types of magic, there is a natural barrier between the arcane and the technological. Most printers can't replicate spell words, for instance, and emailed spell words tend to cause crashes or just come up blank. While some magical materials like crystals brought through the in-between have been able to interface with our technology, most magic is incompatible with our tech. Except for Lawmancy. Lawmancy is a human-created school of magic, combining Latin, legal mumbo-jumbo, and just a bit of Centauri to create magical contracts that are magically compelling. As Lawmancy is a human-created school, it can interface with technology. Lawmancy contracts are printed and even stored digitally. Wizards are the scholars, the researchers, and hard-won magic users of the Cataclysm. But there exists a privileged few for whom magic comes naturally. Sorcerers have a natural well of magic within themselves, activated or gained through the vortex. This magic is called spark. Every sorcerer has a spark with varying natures and capacities. Some are small, only being able to use a few spells before needing to rest, while others contain sparks able to challenge some waylines. More than not needing to rely on waylines, sorcerers don't even need spell words. While spell words in wizardry are more refined and capable of producing far more complex results, sorcerers all contain affinities for certain types of spells. This affinity reveals the nature of their spark. Sorcerers can simply expel their spark as the element of their affinity. Pyromancers can create fire, purifiers can release vitality into their targets, and dark sorcerers can release energy that simply damages a target from within. While sorcerers can use their spark as a substitute for a wayline and act like a wizard, it is easier for them to instinctively cast spells using their affinities, typically using movements or simple spell words to refine the casting. The affinity of a spark may also have a profound effect on the nature of the user. Elementalist sorcerers have been known to have personalities reflecting their element. Pyromancers are aggressive, arrogant, and have to constantly balance a desire to just consume with the need to sustain themselves. Purifiers, however, tend to be inherently good, if a bit obsessed with cleanliness and altruism. While the challenge for a wizard is resisting the power of spell words, the challenge for a sorcerer is intense negotiation between their affinity and self. This is a constant battle of personalities and will, with sorcerers either conquering or winning over their affinity, or being conquered by it. It is only when the will of the self is in tandem with the affinity that a sorcerer can become truly great. I hope this guide has helped you understand a bit more about the magic of the Cataclysm. This is a hefty topic with many aspects, and for every rule there are many exceptions. But with this handy guide, you should be one step closer to becoming an archmage and a thriving life after the Cataclysm. Don't forget to subscribe for more lore videos, short stories, and maybe even future live streams. Please like and subscribe, and tell me what you think in the comments. Until next time, remember to hold the line.